Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everyone is doing well. Thank you so much for joining us for another Feature Fridays. My name is Garrett Trott. I'm part of the support team here at Uplifter, and joining me, as always, is the one and only Jackie Kwan. Jackie, how are you today? You're muted.
I know.
It's one of those
and,
days.
and I lost my cursor, so I
Oh.
couldn't actually unmute myself.
And we do this a lot. We got to step up our game.
You know, what's funny is I just wanted to leave you hanging there to see if you could actually do
Yeah,
Feature
just sit
Friday
by.
on
I
your
guess
own.
it's just me now.
Hi, Garrett. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Excellent.
Yes.
Today, we're going to talk about new policy features that we're actually going to be launching next week. And I wanted to give everybody a tour of how the new features will work so that everybody can get ready to start implementing them on their Uplifter sites when we're ready to go next week. So without further ado, let's talk about policies. So in the past, you've always been able to set policies or digital waivers through Uplifter, and that's never been a problem before, but they've always been tied to the checkout process. And they've always been tied to the member who's actually completing the checkout process. So if you actually needed policies to do a couple of additional elements, or if you needed policies very specific to each participant in your family or in the checkout process, you had to do that with either language, or you had to instruct your members to handle that in other ways, like multiple checkouts. But with the new features that we're going to be launching next week, we're going to allow you to handle policies in a far greater number of use cases. And we're hoping that a lot of these policy changes will allow you to handle elements like concussion policies and policies that you might have with respect to COVID-19. So without further ado, I'm in my Demo Gymnastics Club site here, and I have logged into my admin site, and I'm under Settings and Policies. So everything is found in the same place, but you've just got a few more options here. So let's dive in. So you'll see here I've set up a number of different policies, and now we have a couple of different options here that you can see with respect to duration, apply to, and where it's presented at. But let's create a policy so that I can actually walk you through some of these different options that we've added. So when you click Add a Policy, you'll still be able to create a policy name, and that's the summary that appears in the policy when it is presented to your members. But what you can also do is now you can apply this policy either to the member or to the participant. So this setup here with these options are exactly how policies work right now prior to the update. So any policies that you've created to date will be member policies that are presented at the time of invoice, and their acceptance duration is none. Basically, they last for the duration of the invoice. If somebody checks out and those policies apply again to that checkout process, they would be represented with those policies and asked to reaccept yet again. But we've added a few different options. So the first option here is you can now present the policies at not only at the invoice, but as well at time of payment based on the payment method. So this becomes very useful if you actually want to create policies that are specific to the type of payment that you're actually collecting from your member. So for example, you might want to, with a check policy, say something like, we ensure that we will drop off a check to complete our registration within 3 days, or we'll lose our registration spot. What's also very handy is for the option of credit card. You might want to use this very specifically for if you are for PCI compliance, to ensure that you actually tell the members that if you're setting up installment payments, that if they have entered in a credit card number, when their credit card number might be used again by the club without them entering it. So for example, with installments, the credit card would be used to process subsequent installments that might appear on their invoice, or if the member requests any changes to the services that are provided by your club to the specific invoice in play, then the credit card would be recharged, or that refunds would be applied to the credit card that has been entered at this time. So you can specify the wording of that policy as you need. Additionally, we're giving you the option to create policies at the time of creation of a member, or at the time of creation and login. So a creation policy is a policy that would be presented to every member when they actually create a brand new account. So if you don't want this policy to be presented to any of your existing members, you can create a creation policy. If you would like a new policy that's now going to apply to your club that you would like everybody that is already in your system to also accept, you would create what we call a creation and login policy. So just a quick caveat on this. When you create a creation and login policy, if you've actually set a duration, um, anybody who has not already accepted the policy previously, if they are actually logged into the site, they will immediately be shunted to their account policies page that I'll show you in a few minutes, and they'll be asked to accept that policy. So before you create a login policy, make sure that you're clear on what it is that you would like the policy to say. Refine your wording to ensure that as soon as you click save, anybody who's logged into your site will be asked to accept that policy immediately. So just keep that in mind. So as I mentioned as well, you can also create your policies to apply specifically to a participant. So, as I mentioned, when you go through the checkout policy, if you've actually checked out with multiple children in your checkout, if you have a participant policy, it would present you a policy, one for every participant. And this might be very good for an acknowledgement of your risk in terms of COVID-19, or a concussion policy where you actually do need to track a specific acceptance for each and every single participant that is going through the registration process. You can create these policies as part of your invoice, as part of the time when you actually create a participant, or at the time of login. So as soon as a member has logged in and you've created a participant policy, what they would be shunted into their account policies page, and they would be presented with this policy, one for each participant in their account. So lots of different options here for how you're going to apply this policy, and then as well pull that reporting on the back end if you actually ever need to report because you're being audited for a particular reason, or you need to know, whether or not these participants have signed off, or the parents for that matter have signed off on a particular policy or waiver. The other thing you can now do is actually define the policy acceptance duration. So as I mentioned previously, all of our policies were invoice policies that had no duration. So every time they checked out, they would be represented with this policy. But now you can actually define how long the policy is effective until. So this would be great if you have some policies that span basically the entirety of your season. You only want your members to, let's say, accept a policy with respect to photos and a photo release or a media waiver once every season. So you would have this expire maybe at the end of next season, or at the end of this current season. Once that policy expires, you can then delete that policy and create a new one, or you can update the policy with the new policy date, which would then be represented to your members with the new policy date expiring. Alternatively, you might want to create a policy that renews every X number of days or X number of months. So this would be excellent in terms of if part of your return to play protocols that have been defined by either your club or your governing body or your jurisdiction requires you to have each of your participants do a self-assessment to ensure that they do not exhibit any COVID-19 symptoms, and you need that policy to be accepted every 7 days. If you create a participant policy that is required on login, or perhaps at time of invoice when they register for something, that is renews every 7 days, what will happen is the first time they accept it, Uplifter will timestamp that time that they accepted it, and then say that this expires 7 days from now at the time that they accepted it. When they log in 7.5 days later, they would then be again shunted over to their account policies page and asked to reaccept this policy if this is a required policy. So this allows you to just tell your members on a weekly basis, if you haven't actually done the self-assessment attestation on Uplifter within our website this week, log in on Sunday night. It will be there once it's expired, and just renew your policy, reaccept your policy, and then you'll have a new renewal date and acceptance date, as it were, once they've accepted that. The next set of options that we're adding is the ability to add what are called policy acknowledgments. So At the bottom of the policy, we've always had a little button that says accept or close or reject. Now we're allowing you as a club to actually ask members more specific questions as part of that policy. So let's switch back to a member policy. As a member policy, you can ask them to confirm that they are the parent or legal guardian of the participants as part of this registration or this account. And you can also ask them to check off a box that says, I am at least 18 years of age. So you can also do the same for participant policies, but then you also have a couple of other options here as well. Not only do we have do not ask, but you can have them identify that they are the participant that is participating in these activities at the club. This is very important, especially for some of the concussion policies that are required by certain provincial jurisdictions, that you actually need a separate policy for each participant, and you need to acknowledge that that participant has actually reviewed that policy and accepted that. You can ask them to confirm their age of majority. So in this case, the way that I've set this up, only participants that are 18 years old could accept this policy. But let's say you want to ensure that everybody does accept this policy, regardless of their age, but you need their parent or legal guardian to accept that policy. My screen is lagging a bit. Can you see that, Garrett? Am I like switching things and it's like not?
Yeah, that, and we've got some reports that the video is a little blurry. I think this is because we're splitting it, like I'm streaming your screen. I think there's some strange stuff going on. But as a reminder to everyone, we are recording this, so we will have this available on YouTube as well. A lot of this is just conceptual anyway, so it works out very nicely, and you don't really need to see the screen too much. But we will have a very clean version on YouTube after this.
I apologize. So next time you can just interrupt me and say, let's stop, start again.
Actually, I don't know if that's going to work. So,
so here, this option here that says parent and legal guardian. So what you can say is, with this policy, you can say this is a participant policy that applies to the participant, but if the participant is under the age of 18 that you specified here, it will ask them to acknowledge that they are the parent or legal guardian of the participant that is attached to this policy. Additionally, what you can also do is determine a max age that you only want to present this policy to. And I'll show you how that works in action, because there are a couple of use cases that we are very aware of, especially in the province of Ontario, where this becomes very useful. So the acceptance, the requirements are the same as before. You can make the policy required or not required before they're able to proceed with whatever it is that you're asking them to, whether it's an invoice, creating of a participant or member, or logging in. As well, we've also given another final option of being able to request a digital signature as a type name. So what this will do is provide a little box at the bottom of the screen, of the acceptance screen, that will ask them to type in the name, so that you actually have determined this will basically be indicated as a digital signature. Now you will need to check with your regional jurisdiction to see whether or not a typed name will suffice in terms of a digital signature in the context of which you're actually creating this digital waiver. Finally, one last option that we've also provided at time of invoice, and I believe at time of payment as well, is you can also give the option to actually email this policy to another party so that they can accept on your behalf. So that way, if you're not able to actually accept the policy right away, but you know that the participant is, in a different location, you need them to accept that as part of your checkout, you can just click this off, and they'll be presented with a little box that will allow them to type in an email address. It'll automatically send that policy to that person by email. That person can click on the link and accept the policy, and then you'll be able to proceed with whatever it is that you're doing as part of this policy. If you make the policy required, they will not be able to proceed until somebody has accepted that policy. If it's not required, that will give them the option to email the policy, but they'll still be able to proceed with whatever it is that they're doing. Keep in mind that you'll have to manually determine whether or not that policy was accepted if you need that for some sort of auditing purposes. Everything else is pretty much the same. At the bottom, you're still able to define your policy in terms of adding your text as required and link it to very specific elements as part of the registration process. So those are all the different new options. And what I'd like to do is kind of show you how these work in action, or what type of use cases you might use this for. That took me a little longer than I expected. I'm sorry. I'm going to try not to go over time. But
That's okay. It's because I was interrupting you so much.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So a couple of options here. I'm just going to rush through here. So a couple of options here is one thing to keep in mind is, for example, in Ontario, for example, we have a concussion policy requirement where both the participant and possibly the legal guardian may need to actually accept the concussion policy and acknowledge that they understand what the concussion policy is of that organization. So in this case, to set up your policy, I've created a participant policy at time of invoice. It's effective basically for the season. I've made it so that the participant must acknowledge that they are the participant at time of checkout. And as well, that I'm only going to present this to any participants that are up to the age of 26. But I don't need to confirm an age of majority, because every participant needs to actually accept this policy in some way, shape, or form. What I've also done is I've also created a parent or legal guardian policy that that if I think I've set this up correctly, where the parent or legal guardian needs to acknowledge that they have actually read and reviewed the concussion policy. You'll want to use the option of parent and legal guardian as a participant if under the age of majority. So if they're under 18, it will ask them to acknowledge that they are the participant or legal guardian, and they're only going to present this if they are actually, no, this is supposed to be 0. Sorry, I think I did this one wrong. So I was playing around with my settings as I was doing testing. So those are a couple of different options here that you can use to set up your policies. But what's also useful is, for example, I know a lot of members have asked us this in the past, was can we make it so that policies are, we can make sure that only people who are 18 years of age or who are the parent or legal guardian are the people who create an account. So you can now use these policies to do that. And this is where I've actually used the option in perpetuity. So for example, I'm saying that when I create a member account, that I am at least the age of 18 and that I am the parent and legal guardian for this account. And I've done in perpetuity because as soon as you've agreed that you're 18 years old, you're always going to be 18 years old unless we discover time travel. So, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you how this.
To talk about that.
Shh, well, we're working on it. We're working on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what it looks like, what these member account and participant creation policies look like. So here I am on our login page, and you'll see the member policy on creation that I created here appears in the member creation page. And if I click on it, you'll see the 2 boxes that I've created here where I've suggested the acknowledgement of wanting to acknowledge that I am the parent or legal guardian of participants in this account, and that I'm at least the age of 18, I'm at least 18 years of age. So these are how those options will manifest itself. And as well, this is how the digital signature will manifest itself down in this little box here. So what I can also show you is the participant creation policy. If I'm actually going to be registering myself in programs, you'll see that the new participant code of conduct policy that I created also appears. And it also, I set it up also with the acknowledgements that I am the participant and that I am at least 12 years of age. So, and as you can see here, unless I actually create the policy, to, the participant to be at least 12 years of age, I won't be allowed to proceed. So that's how a creation policy will look. Let's take a look at the checkout now and show you what the checkout policies will look like and how that will differ just slightly. So here I am. Let me just make sure I'm still logged in as Kyle. Here. I'm going to quickly go to my women's programs and register quickly for a women's program. Hopefully I've got one here. I think this one is one that I haven't registered for. I'm going to register Amber here. Now, I had actually checked out previously with Kyle and Amber for some different programs earlier today. And because of that, when I actually go to my shopping cart page, when I click on billing information, you'll see now that the policies that I had actually already accepted in my previous checkout that actually have an expiry date are here presented, but because I've already accepted them, they're already checked off. And when I click on them, it'll show me that I accepted that earlier today at 11:23 a.m. So this will make it so that people don't have to actually click through all the policies if they've accepted them before, but at least still present it to them so that they know that those policies are still in effect. As well, the policies that I didn't actually put an effective date on are still presented to me again. I can accept them as I normally do. And I'm going to show you as well what the payment policy looks like. Close this. I'm going to reject the media policy because I don't want my picture taken. So when I go to payment information, I had actually created earlier a payment policy here, a pay in person policy. And if I actually select confirm and pay in person, the policy will be presented to me, and it will only show that to you if you actually select that payment method. So as you can see, I didn't create a credit card policy, so nothing is presented to me. But when I click pay in person, it does present me the policy before it actually completes the process. So this will present me the policy, and I will need to accept it before I'm actually allowed to check out, complete with the checkout process. So that is how a payment policy works. So now let's take a look at, now as also with all of these policies, I'd also like to mention that we are allowing administrators to actually add policies to an invoice as well. So if I am an administrator and I am creating a invoice for one of my members, it used to be before that you actually had to go through the checkout process in order to actually have policies attached to a member. So in this case, I'm going to think, I hope. So when I actually add somebody to an invoice, hopefully I'll click calculate. No, I knew that was the wrong one.
Then why'd you pick it?
You know, because I
you wanted to show the error system. That's
yeah, exactly, exactly. So I'm going to register Kim here for my Summer Camp 3. When I click calculate, just like any of your subscriptions would automatically be added to the bottom of your invoice. Now, any of the policies that would apply to this invoice would also be added. You can manually remove them if you'd like, or you can actually manually add a policy if you need to on a specific basis. Now, once you've added these policies to the invoice, when the member logs in, they will then be shunted over to their account policies page, which I will show you next, and they will be asked to accept those policies. So that way you're not just manually adding these policies, they are actually required to log in and actually accept those policies, and you can ensure that they have accepted those policies digitally, as it were. So, so now you can, like I said, add policies on administrative invoices, which is very, very useful. Now let's take a look at what the policies look like within your account. So here I'm back in my Kyle account. I'm a regular member. I'm going down to Kyle, my account. Once I've clicked there, we've added this new menu item called policies. Once I click on the policies page, now if I actually have any required pending policies in my account that I haven't accepted yet or I haven't viewed, when I log in, I will be automatically pushed over to this page, and any of the policies that are outstanding would be highlighted here in red. Very much like our automated waitlist system, that if they are on the waitlist and there's a spot available for them, they would be pushed over to the waitlist page. They'll be pushed over to the policies page. They'll see any of the policies that are still basically in effect and when they're valid until. And basically any of the policies that you've set with an auto renewal date would also appear here, and when they've expired, they would appear in red, and they would be asked to basically accept that policy again before they're able to proceed with the rest of the site. So all they need to do is just click on the name, and they'll actually see the policy that they had previously accepted or need to accept, and they can then re-accept the policy at that time. So that's basically how the new policies features work. A few little cautions. I think I've mentioned things like when you create a login policy, people will be automatically pushed to this page with login policies if they're actually logged into the system at the time. This one caution that I did forget to mention, with policies, as you know, Uplifter always tracks the exact wording of the policy that the members have actually accepted at the time that they accept it. So when you actually create a brand new policy, or sorry, when you actually edit an existing policy, and if you actually change any of the wording or change any of the details with respect to the acceptance of that policy, like for example, when it expires or the duration of it, the policy will actually be set up as basically a replacement policy where members will need to re-accept that policy. So be very careful if you've actually created any policies with a duration date, whether it be effective until or renew every. If you actually update that policy, anybody who has accepted that policy previously will be re-prompted to re-accept that policy if they are a required policy. So this is a great way if you actually change your policies as an organization for you to actually automatically get members to re-accept the new wording of any of those policies when you actually change them within your system. So if you don't want people to redo that, what you can actually do is you can actually delete the policy or remove the policy and then just recreate a new policy so that they're not represented, but then you'll also always track the exact wording of the policy that the members have accepted at the time of acceptance. So and that's basically it. So that's policies in a nutshell. Did I miss anything, Garrett? Was there anything that I skimmed over too quickly?
Most of it. No, you did a great job. We went a fair bit over our time there, but this is going to be an important change. So thank you to everyone who's taken the time today to sort of listen to us and learn more about the new features and tools. That will really be it for us today. As a quick aside, I want to give a shout out to the Refer and Save feature. We've been getting a lot of great feedback from our clubs, so just want to let you guys know you can get your piece of the pie as well. Refer and Save, and you can get $10 off of your monthly fees for the first 6 months, and whoever you refer gets $10 off of their monthly fees as well. So that's a great way to save some cash and spread the good news. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Jackie, sorry I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to mention that if you do like the features that you see here in Uplifter, or you know of a club that hasn't yet set up online registration is a great way to help limit contact with your members and increase social distancing, especially in this crazy time of COVID-19. Use the Refer and Save option within your site, and if you actually send this email out to anybody else that you know that might be could use Uplifter and take advantage of these great features. If they use the link that you've sent them, you'll save some money, and they'll save some money when they actually go live with Uplifter. So thank you very much for joining us, and I hope everybody is staying cool in this heat, and everybody is staying safe. So thanks so much, and we will see you guys next week.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.